last thing, this is, Saturday the 14th, and we're going to go ahead and do our book review. I think I made sure to let you guys know off the air. I have finally picked up Death of a King. You know, the real story of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s final year. Um, it had been on my reading list ever since, and it's written by Tavis Smiley. Ever since I first heard the book about it, because I've always been a big Dr. King fan. Not because of the "I Have a Dream," um, foolishness. Actually, it's mostly in reaction to that. Um, Working in the public school system, over the course of years, I've seen how, and not in the African American, predominantly African American school, or even predominantly African American teachers or students. I've seen how it's been watered down over time, to come together to just "I have a dream." So I really was interested in reading this book. So I picked it up from the library, and I'm about halfway through. And I have to say, gentlemen, and listeners, you really need to read this book. It's a quick read in the sense of the style it's written. It's not written like a textbook. It's not written like a very dry, historical account. I think Tavis did a really good job, him and his co-writer, of putting it in the form of a story. So it's you're reading the story, a historically accurate story of what that final year was like for him. It's a lot of behind the scenes stuff, a lot of asides, a lot of tying things together from things that happened before. And of course, it's that final year when you had, Stokely Carmichael and H. Rap Brown, and a rise of black militancy in the late 60s, and how that conflicted with Dr. King's, uh, uh, nonviolent approach. And how, he was, in the book, trying to desperately keep, all those factions together when he moves into this new era of, leaving behind the civil rights, and, coming to the understanding that, you know, integrating things is not helping. It didn't help as much as he thought he was, getting the right to vote, and the Montgomery bus boycott and all those things gave symbolic victories, but it wasn't helping to address the underlying issue that he identified as poverty, racism, and militarism, and how he was trying to move towards, solving that, which is when, things got even worse. Because after the dream speech, everybody, oh, Dr. King, oh, we love you, we love you. And then he started talking about, well, wait a minute, what about poverty? you know, poverty and racism, in his mind at least, were linked. And how can you have, how can you talk about it, dealing with racism if you're not going to talk about dealing with poverty? And then how are you going to talk about dealing with racism and poverty if you're spending billions in the war? At the time, it was Vietnam, and all this money is going over there, while you're leaving your poorest citizens, African Americans, with shrinking social budgets and shrinking opportunities, except to go fight and die over there in Vietnam. I think it's a fantastic book, part. Sorry. And I think Dr. King is a fantastic, an interesting character. Malcolm has already been assassinated by this time, so it is, it is a really good book. I don't know how else to say. I really encourage people to read the book. It's
Sounds like it was a good book too.
yeah, and like I said, it's written in a way that it's not boring. At least I didn't find it boring, because of the. It's like, it's like, hey, let me sit down and tell you the story. And I think for me that makes a big difference. It's not even a particularly long book. Obviously it's not 365 days, but it's chunks of time, leading up to his assassination, and the people who were around him, and the fights. Jesse Jackson is in it, and all sorts of folks, make cameo appearances because they obviously were very much involved in his life, especially going up to the end. So, like I said, I highly, 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 highly recommend it. I'm about halfway through. My goal was to try to finish it uh, by the 16th. That is still my goal, to finish the book by the 16th. And there's just parts. It's a very hard book to put down because of the way it's written. It just draws you into the story. So that's my book review portion, and it's all about Dr. King.